She thought she had made her peace with Dorothy Beaumont. After everything, the criticism, the interference, the slow poison of never feeling like enough, Simone had chosen to forgive. Not because it was easy, because Raymond deserved a family that wasn't at war. But forgiveness, Simone was learning, is not the same as trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself over a single holiday dinner and a careful exchange of polite smiles. What Simone didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Dorothy had been carrying a secret for 30 years. A secret that had shaped every decision she ever made. A secret folded inside an envelope, tucked beneath a stack of prayer books in a woman's bedroom, waiting to be found by the one person Dorothy had never wanted to find it. 6 months had passed since the night everything came out. 6 months since Simone had sat across from her mother-in-law and felt, for the first time, like she had finally been seen. The dinner had been tense and tearful and exhausting, and in the days that followed, the Beaumont household had settled into something that resembled calm. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't war either. Dorothy still called on Sundays. Raymond still answered every time. And Simone had learned to sit in the same room as her mother-in-law without bracing for impact. That counted for something. What surprised Simone most was how ordinary it all looked from the outside. Dorothy brought food when she visited. She asked about the grandchildren by name. She complimented Simone's kitchen one afternoon in a voice so careful and deliberate that it almost sounded rehearsed. And maybe it was. Maybe they were all rehearsing, performing a version of peace that none of them fully believed in yet. Simone told herself it was progress. She told herself that families don't heal overnight. She told herself a lot of things in those 6 months, and most of them were true. But underneath the calm, she had never quite stopped watching. It was Dorothy who suggested the dinner. Not Raymond, not Simone, Dorothy. She called on a Tuesday evening and asked if the family might come together the following Saturday to mark the anniversary of Harold Beaumont's passing. Harold had died 22 years ago, before Simone ever entered the picture. She had seen photographs of him, a tall man with Raymond's quiet eyes and a smile that looked like it cost him something. But she had never known him. Raymond rarely spoke about his father, and when he did, his voice went somewhere far away and soft. Simone had learned not to push. What struck her about Dorothy's invitation was the insistence. She didn't just want them to come. She wanted to cook. She wanted to set the table herself. She asked Simone not to bring anything, not even dessert, which was unusual enough to register. Raymond said his mother got like this sometimes around Harold's anniversary, quiet, focused, as if honoring him was something that required the full weight of her attention. Simone accepted the invitation without argument. She dressed the children carefully that Saturday afternoon and drove to Dorothy's house, telling herself it was just dinner. She almost believed it. The house smelled of slow-cooked greens and something sweet underneath, the kind of smell that pulls you back to a childhood you might not even have had. Dorothy had set the dining table with the good china, the plates that only came out for funerals and Christmas. A photograph of Harold had been placed at the center, framed in dark wood, his expression in it unreadable and still. Simone helped the children settle and excused herself to use the restroom down the hall. But the hall bathroom was occupied, and Dorothy, mid-stir at the stove, called out that she should use the one in the bedroom. "Just through the door," she said. "Don't mind the mess." There was no mess. Dorothy's bedroom was immaculate, bed made with military precision, surfaces clear, everything in its place. Simone almost didn't notice the stack of prayer books on the nightstand. She would have walked past them entirely if one hadn't been slightly off-center, its edge catching the light in a way that drew her eye. Tucked beneath it was an envelope, ivory-colored, old, the kind of paper that had been handled so many times it had gone soft at the creases. Simone's name was not on it. Nothing was written on it at all. She should have walked away. She knows that now. But something, instinct or fate, or just the particular kind of exhaustion that makes a person stop protecting themselves, made her reach for it. Inside was a letter, handwritten in a script she didn't recognize, dated 31 years ago. And by the time she reached the second paragraph, her hands had stopped being steady. She waited until after the children were in the car. Raymond was helping Dorothy with the dishes, the two of them moving around each other in that practiced, wordless way of people who have shared a kitchen for decades. Simone stood in the doorway of the dining room and asked Raymond if he could give them a minute. He looked at her face and left the room without asking why. Dorothy turned from the sink slowly, as if she already knew. She dried her hands on a dish towel and folded it twice before she set it down. And in that small, deliberate gesture, Simone saw everything. The composure, the control, the woman who had spent 30 years deciding exactly how much the world was allowed to see. Simone placed the letter on the kitchen counter between them. She didn't accuse. She didn't raise her voice. She had been through enough in this family to know that anger would give Dorothy somewhere to hide. Instead, she simply said, "I found this. I think you need to explain it to me." Dorothy looked at the envelope for a long moment. She looked at Simone. And then, for the first time in all the years they had known each other, Dorothy Beaumont pulled out a kitchen chair, sat down, and told the truth. Harold Beaumont had been a proud man. That was how Dorothy always began, on the rare occasions she spoke of him at all, with that word, proud. But pride, she explained now, had a way of becoming its own kind of burden. When Raymond was 7 years old, Harold had made a business decision that unraveled quietly and completely over the following 2 years. By the time Raymond was 9, the family owed a debt so significant that Dorothy had spent the decade following Harold's death working 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to pay it down without Raymond ever knowing. She had not wanted him to carry the weight of his father's failure. She had not wanted him to look back on his childhood and see only lack. What the letter contained was the final correspondence from the creditor, a private lender, a man Harold had trusted and shouldn't have, confirming that the debt had been fully settled. Dorothy had received it 3 years after Harold died. She had read it standing in this very kitchen, alone, and then she had folded it and placed it beneath her prayer books because she didn't know what else to do with the end of something that had cost her so much. She had never told Raymond. Not because she was ashamed, she said, though some shame was there too, but because she had built Raymond's entire sense of his father around the photograph on that dining room table. And she had not known how to hand him the truth without also handing him the pieces of something she had spent decades holding together. So she controlled what she could. She managed every surface. She made sure nothing in Raymond's world was ever uncertain or unstable or out of place. Because she knew what it felt like when things fell apart without warning, and she had promised herself her son never would. Simone drove home that night in silence. Raymond sat beside her, the letter now in his hands, reading it in the orange glow of passing streetlights. She watched him from the corner of her eye, the way you watch someone absorb something that will take months to fully settle. He didn't cry. He just got very quiet in the way that Raymond always got quiet when something broke through the careful order he kept inside himself. She recognized it because she had seen it before. It was the same face he made when he thought no one was looking. She didn't reach for his hand. Not that night. There are moments in a marriage when the kindest thing you can do is let your person sit with what they've just learned without filling the space. Simone understood that. What she was less sure of was what to do with her own feelings. The complicated mixture of sorrow and relief, and something that still, underneath it all, ached. She felt sorry for Dorothy. She did. She understood, now, why a woman who had survived that kind of loss might become rigid and controlling and desperate for perfection. She understood it the way you understand a diagnosis, clinically, with compassion, but also with the clear knowledge that understanding something does not undo the damage it caused. In the weeks that followed, Simone sent Dorothy a card. She wrote 4 sentences and meant all of them. She said she was sorry for what Dorothy had carried alone. She said she hoped, in time, they might find their way to something easier between them. She said the children loved her. She said she wished her well. Dorothy called to thank her, and the conversation lasted 3 minutes, and they were both very careful with each other. And when they hung up, Simone sat with the phone in her lap for a long time. Some doors, when they open, don't open all the way. And sometimes that is not failure. Sometimes that is simply what honest looks like. If you've ever had to forgive someone while still protecting yourself from them, if you've ever held both compassion and distance in the same two hands, then you know exactly where Simone is standing right now. Healing isn't always a reunion. Sometimes it's just choosing not to carry someone else's secrets as your own bitterness. Simone is learning that. Slowly, imperfectly, one careful day at a time. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. We read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe to Calm Mind Stories. We'll be here every week with the kind of storytelling that stays with you.